Tonight on Let It Rip.
The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we believe in Michigan? I know I do.
Governor Whitmer laying out what some are calling a bipartisan agenda during her State of the State address this week, which even includes tax cuts. Yet some think what she left out of her speech speaks volumes. But first,
the threat to Ukraine is real, it's immediate, and there's also a realistic possibility now that a Russian offensive could target Kyiv.
Thousands of U.S. troops are on standby, as many believe Russia is planning on invading its neighbor, Ukraine. If that happens, how should America respond? And so it is time to let it rip. On the panel tonight, Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, retired Army colonel and current chairman of the Oakland County Republican Party, Rocky Rachowski, and of course, anchor attorney Charlie Langton, who doesn't sleep much, but he's always ready to go. And we begin with Boris Papatenko, who's the vice president for external affairs for the Michigan division of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. And so we should begin with Boris to tell us what his thoughts are right now on this conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Have you been in touch, Boris, with the people in Ukraine? And what are their thoughts right now? Do they think that war with Russia is inevitable?
Thank you, Roop. I, first of all, would like to welcome and express my appreciation to be on the panel with Congressman and woman Dingell. I know how much she has done for making sure that our country understands how deeply the problems facing Ukraine also affect our country, America. And with the help that we have from people like Debbie, from people like Andy Levin, people like Gary Peters and others in our congressional delegation to Congress, we are able as a community to feel a sense of support, a sense of understanding, and a sense of going forward, finally going forward with the aid that Ukraine so desperately needs to prevent Russia from making a devastating mistake for Russians, for Ukrainians, and for the whole world. Our people are really amazing. 8 years of war. After 30 years of independence, trying to consolidate independence in the face of nonstop Russian hybrid warfare for 30 years. We've had 8 years of military war, but we've had 30 years of Russian efforts to prevent Ukraine from joining the civilized world that it so desperately wants. And today, civil society in Ukraine is mobilized. They are ready to help their government move forward in resisting Russian aggression. You have to remember that Ukrainian nation is the one, not so much the political elite, but the Ukrainian nation that pushed their fellow countrymen to independence in '91 when they had the revolution on granite, when hundreds of thousands and millions of Ukrainians came out and stayed out until the referendum, when 90% of Ukrainians voted for independence. Then in 2004, when Russia tried to poison and kill the pro-Western presidential candidate, the people came out again in the millions and forced Russia to back off. And we got our president.
A little bit of history, Boris, that you're talking about here, but I wanted to ask you directly, what are your thoughts right now, given the history that you speak of, given what you just said? What are your thoughts on whether or not a conflict with Russia is inevitable or not? Do you believe that's something that will happen or that can be avoided?
I think that something will happen. Whether it will be an all-out assault, whether it will be another incursion like in eastern Ukraine, where territory is today occupied and Ukrainian soldiers are dying every day, or whether it's going to be a hybrid massive attack to shut down the infrastructure grid of electricity, of natural gas, and so forth. All of this is possible. But what I was trying to get at is that the Ukrainian people are so hardened over these years of rebuilding their country and of resisting Russia, that it's remarkable how calm and matter of fact and deliberately the people of Ukraine are today going about their business preparing for war. And these are civilians. These are volunteers. It was volunteers who stopped the first Russian assault. There was no Ukrainian army. There was only 7,000 Ukrainian active duty soldiers at the time. I personally went into the war zone in March of 2014 and saw how the volunteer battalions were fighting with their own weapons and with provisions provided by the villages of the area. It was remarkable. And today I spoke with Poltava in eastern Ukraine. It's a major city. And there they have thousands of volunteers that are, believe it or not, baking Ukrainian bread for the troops on the front line, sewing camouflage netting, putting bullets into magazines. This is all being done by moms and dads and their kids during their time off. It's really a remarkable mobilization of the whole nation. All of this is happening under the surface. President Zelensky is trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while at the same time preparing for war.
Boris, we appreciate your perspective. Let's bring in the fold here Representative Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman, you know the president personally. You've known him for many years. You're friends with him. In talks with him, in knowing him, do you think this is something that he would like to engage with relative to getting involved with the war between Russia and Ukraine?
I don't think anybody I know wants to get into war with anybody, but we need to take very seriously what is happening in the Ukraine right now. There has been a military buildup. Putin is moving in thousands of troops. Our European allies share our deep concerns, and we have to make it very clear that we are going to stand up for democracies and for protecting that area of the world, and quite frankly, the international order, which is based on the rule of law. Putin needs to know the United States and NATO are very serious about any escalation into war.
But when we think about the messaging right now from the White House, we've heard the press secretary talk about a war looking imminent at certain points. We know that Ukraine, in phone conversations, have said before that they're concerned with that tone because it is not doing them any good. Do you think that the stance by the White House could be perhaps a little bit different than it is?
I think the White House has made it very clear that they are participating in discussions, trying to de-escalate it, working with whatever we do. We cannot do alone. We must do with other countries that are part of NATO, looking at economic sanctions, doing anything. None of us wants to see a war. None of us wants to see innocent lives put at risk. We have to make sure that whatever we're doing, we are protecting the innocent people of Ukraine. But nobody needs to think that the United States is weak or not prepared to stand up where we must.
Rocky, with your military background, you take a look at the current situation, this escalation, but now we hear, at least from Russia, saying, look, we don't want this to happen. We would like this to de-escalate. It seems like nobody, as the Congresswoman says, wants a war. What are your thoughts? How do we move forward?
Well, I'm very concerned because I actually see it heading towards some type of war or incursion. It's not just the surrounding areas of where Russia touches Ukraine, a sovereign country. By the way, it's great that the president finally acknowledges borders. I wish he'd acknowledge our U.S. borders. But when you're looking at the sovereign borders of Ukraine and where Russia touches, there's a buildup of forces. But also, do not forget that there is a large escalation, a huge escalation, as well as of the Russian air forces in Belarus, which is just east of Poland and just north of Ukraine. And when you look at that and the large escalation in Belarus, which is now one could say is a puppet government of Putin, I believe that we're heading towards some type of conflict. Again, I do not believe that we're past that diplomacy part, but we have to be prepared that if NATO is attacked, or remember, Ukraine is not a member of NATO yet, but if Russia incurs on Ukraine and then threatens Poland and the Baltic nations, and now we hear Poland's President Kwasniewski standing with our brothers in Ukraine and basically saying that we will defend you. So it's starting to become a tinderbox.
Charlie, bring you into the fold. Do sanctions work? Can they work in this situation? We know that Russia relies heavily when it comes to trade with the European Union, and very heavily so. Can they do something to stop this before it gets into an escalated state?
I don't think anybody in the United States wants a war, especially right now. We've got a lot of problems at home, and I think we have to do everything to avoid a war. But what I do think, though, is that the president is going to have to come out, and I think he's going to have to do something that is more forceful than what he's doing to justify what involvement does the United States have in Ukraine. And I'm not sure I'm getting that right now. The people that I talk to on the streets, why are we risking lives, American lives, for Ukraine? I'm not saying that there's not an interest in democracy and a sovereign nation and perhaps some membership in NATO. Those are all good things. But I have a feeling this is far bigger than just Russia and Ukraine. But I don't think that the messaging at the moment, and Debbie, help me out on this, I think that there's a message right now where there could be a war, but why are we risking American lives in a country so far away? What is the American interest? I want to know.
Charlie, I can answer one
that,
portion of that, if you'd allow me, and that is that although Ukraine is not a member of NATO right now, NATO, for the first time ever, invoked Article 5, which if an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, after 9/11, where NATO stood with the United States and actually went into Afghanistan and stood with the United States military, which I served with many of the NATO forces. So this is an issue where, do we stand with Eastern Europe, which stands with Ukraine, or do we not?
It's a
Congresswoman,
bigger
8,500 U.S. troops right now standing by just in case. Your concerns about them and, of course, their families as well.
I don't know who you're saying that to, but I'm going to tell you that I'm scared. I'm scared, but I'm going to tell you something that point blank, a successful invasion by Russia would establish Russia is a dominant expansionist power in Eastern Europe. It is a threat to all stable governments and would also empower and make others worry about authoritarian governments, that others would be vulnerable to take over, like Taiwan by China. This is a threat to world peace, I think, in ways that some people don't realize.
But what is Russia, Debbie, what's Russia going to do if they take Ukraine? How is that going to affect the average person in the city of Detroit, for example, if Russia takes over Ukraine?
I'm going to let Rocky answer that because he and I agree on this.
Actually, there is an economic issue, and Boris can talk about. Ukraine is actually not just the breadbasket for Russia, but also a powerhouse in minerals and strategically placed. And if Russia gathers Ukraine instead of Ukraine allow Ukraine their sovereignty. If they want to join NATO, they should join NATO. I'm a strong supporter of that. But also, please remember that this is a pact where Russia is using Europe, including Germany right now, as a power play to break up our NATO allies, to break up those Eastern Bloc nations. Because if you look at the Nordic Stream pipeline that is feeding Germany in the winters with natural gas. This is a power play where Russia is gaining a stronger foothold in Europe and putting more of a control and an economic control and a military control into Europe. It's an issue that we should be concerned with.
Many of the dynamics that played out in World War II are present now as we look at this world order. And, it's not just Ukraine. We have very significant
Germany
populations.
and Russia. Right.
Even in our area, Lithuania is in great danger as well. We have significant, Rocky's one of them, people of Polish descent, my husband. The Eastern Europe is under great threat by this action. And we are part of a military alliance where we have pledged to protect each other.
And the next few days
in
are
relation to what
critical.
you said earlier, one of the things that people may not know is that the Michigan National Guard, one of their nations that they support and that they train in, besides Poland, is Lithuania.
Well, this is going to continue,
I'm glad to
obviously.
see that everybody is in
in
agreement here. That's a
Charlie,
good thing.
Nobody wants this.
Nobody wants war.
Nobody wants it.
I don't
Nobody
know if
wants
there's
it.
diplomacy that we can exercise in Ukraine and Russia, but I hope they can.
Well, the next few days are going to be very telling, and we, of course, will be watching it very closely. I know each and every one of you will be watching it very closely. When we come back on the other end of the break, we're going to be talking about something that everybody in the state of Michigan was watching closely, the state of the state in Michigan. The governor says the state of the state is strong 2 years after the pandemic and so many other challenges. What are your thoughts? What does our panel think? We're going to take it to them coming up. Welcome back to Let It Rip. We're once again joined by Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and Charlie to talk about Governor Whitmer's State of the State address. We also want to welcome in two state senators, Republican Jim Runstad and Democrat Adam Ollier. And we have the executive director of the Michigan Freedom Fund, Tori Sachs. And it's good to see all of you. Thanks for joining us. Tori, we'll begin with you because I suspect you think the governor's address may have been lacking in some areas. Am I right?
Look, I mean, she's trying to turn it on to campaign mode. She was just minutes away from Detroit during the speech. And she didn't mention the fact, and I think a lot of people still don't know, that students in Detroit haven't been to school for 43 days. They haven't been in the classroom since before Christmas. They had extra days off before Christmas. And the same for Flint. Those students are not able to go to school. They're locked out of their classrooms. And there was nothing in there about the services that they're going to need, the learning education that she vetoed. She vetoed reading scholarships to hire reading tutors. None of that was in there. There was not a strong call to action to get those kids back in school. And I think that's very unfortunate.
Congresswoman, when you take a look at the speech yesterday, do you think it was lacking the kind of touch that was needed for parents to hear in those cities like Detroit and Flint and elsewhere where their kids aren't in school and they wonder why they're not?
I think the governor said kids belong in schools. I think everyone's working very hard to get them back in the classroom. Look, everybody's sick of COVID. It hangs over everything. It colors everything. We are trying to get children back into the schools, keep them safe, keep them from getting sick. ICUs are filling up with them. I do think she had to cover a lot in a small period of time. People are tired of people being negative all the time. And she was clear, kids belong in the classroom, which we are working on at the federal level too. So,
but we know there's a $25,000 per pupil price tag that goes along from the feds. And even the president himself, President Biden, said, as the governor echoed, as you say, that kids belong in school. And he put the dollars to back it up. Why aren't those dollars being used to keep kids in school? That's a question many people are asking.
I think that part of that belongs at the local level, that people have to answer that question. Why is the state legislature not spending the money that we sent them from the American Recovery Act to help many these local levels of government? My message tonight, let's all work together for the people in Michigan and quit the partisan bickering, which I think she was trying. We had a big win this week with General Motors. She talked about that. Let's put helping Michiganders first. And even though it's an election year, COVID has got too many challenges here. Let's work together to fix the problems.
Adam, your thoughts on that as someone who wants to, of course, win in an office you're running for right now. How do you get kids back in school? And should the governor have addressed that? And is that something that she should have taken a stronger stance on?
Look, I have little kids. I have a 1-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. Everyone's talking about what's best for kids. But as a parent, I want my kids in a safe environment. And until we get COVID under control, teachers and educators are going to have to make the best decision to get kids in the space. Republicans love talking about our kids going to learn, aren't they? We've been underfunding education for generations. And this is just another talking point. We need to get kids back in school, but the only way we're going to do that is if we get vaccination and we make sure that it's safe for them to go to school, because parents aren't going to send their kids to schools that aren't safe when they have to bring home COVID. It's just not going to happen.
Look, I just talked to a mom. I was just talking to moms. I'm a mom. I have kids in school who are trying to learn how to read, who've had now 3 school years of disruption. I had a mom just before this that I was talking to cry to me that her 7-year-old is behind in reading, has been in and out of school lockdowns for the last 2 years, is not getting any extra educational support. This is what's happening, right? Like, these moms can't go back to work. This is affecting a lot of children, and it's criminal that it's going to affect them now and for the rest of their lives.
Charlie, what are your thoughts on that? What could have been addressed in the state of the state? You, of course, took a look at that as well.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, I think we saw the campaign issue here as kids going back to school. I think that came out loud and clear. Listen, I think it was a very good speech. Listen, she was very upbeat. She talked about giving $2,500 rebates to people that buy electric vehicles. That's fantastic. She talked about eliminating the tax on pensions. Jim Runstad loved that. He'll vote for that in a heartbeat. There's no question about that. And as far as going back to school, Republicans love local level decisions. And I think realistically, I'm a little surprised that if this is going to be an issue in this governor's race as to what the governor can do about sending kids back to school. It's a decision that Republicans generally say, make it at the local level. And if Detroit and Flint don't want to go back to school for whatever reason, because of the high rate of COVID in that particular area, it should be made on a local level. But listen, as a campaign speech, I think it was very good. I think the governor hit on good points. But listen, I mean, where's the problem here?
Well,
Representative Brunstad?
Yes, finally I get to chime in. It's almost comical to hear, the underfunding of Flint and Detroit. I believe Detroit is $38,000 per student. The average school, $8,700. Flint, almost $50,000 per student. Underfunded. This is to get the kids back to school. They're not, they're virtual. Where are these teachers? They down in Florida sucking on the Mai Tais and having a good old time. Why aren't they there with $50,000 per child? Underfunded. There's no schools in Michigan that get like Flint and Detroit, and they're not educating these kids. It is unbelievable what's happening with these kids that are not getting an education. We're putting the money, we're saying get back to school. That's a constituency of the governor. Flint and Detroit schools, they're going to be all about the governor. The governor's all about them. She should say, get those kids back to school.
Representative Brunstad, what about the tax cuts that the governor talked about? It seemed like something that perhaps Republicans will get on board with as well.
It is complicated. When you get into tax, I chair tax policy, and I've been looking at this. There may be something that we could come together. The Republicans are about across the board. We're not going to say one little segment is going to get a huge tax cut, but she can come to an agreement with us. We'd love to get there where we can get real tax reform that's going to make a difference to all the citizens here. We have $20 billion. We've never had that much of a surplus. If we don't cut taxes now, like we promised we're going to do way back when they increased the income tax, it was supposed to be rolled back in 2015. It was never done. We need to do it now.
Tori, your thoughts on the tax cuts that the governor talked about last night?
Look, I agree with the senator. Everybody needs relief. With a $20 billion, a surplus of money, we need to make sure that that money is getting to the hands of families, all working families in this state, and also the small businesses. There's been a lot of talk in the last week for big businesses and what the state is doing for them, but there hasn't really been a lot of talk from the governor on what she's going to do for small businesses, because her lockdown orders really killed a lot of small businesses, a lot of families who depended on their small business income, and unfortunately, they're still missing from her talking points.
Congresswoman, did you think that should have been addressed more?
I think she did talk about it, and I'm going to tell you that we've been focused on small businesses and restaurants and trying to save them. Why is the legislature not spending the money that we sent to the state to try to help small businesses?
Of course they're spending the money. Have you seen inflation?
No, we haven't.
Have you seen inflation at
no,
the
you
grocery
have not.
store?
You have money sitting that has been sent to the state that the state legislature will not authorize to be sent to these areas to help them. There is money that's available that people are not authorizing. That's a problem.
We have spent billions and billions, but I know that
not enough.
Want us to gush all the money out in one big wave, just splashing money. No, the Republicans in the Senate and the House are not going to splash money. We're being very judicious. We're getting a lot of money out. We're getting money out to make a difference for these businesses that have struggled under the governor, but we're not going to, they want us to just splash $20 billion, just spend it, just spend to spend. But we're not going to.
Jim, that's not what we
Give that
want.
money back.
Jim, no.
Give that money back.
Adam, let's chime in. Let's listen to Adam. Let's listen to Adam, who's someone who wants to run and win. Your thoughts on that money and that cash?
I mean, when he's talking about splashing, we're talking about spending. So homeowners who have been looking for rental assistance haven't gotten it. Children who are looking for more school money, the infrastructure money, lead pipe money to make real difference for real people is being held up by the Republican legislature. When you talked about tax rollbacks, that was done under Republican control of every level. Republicans are loving to make these kind of elaborate points about how they do or don't care. But if kids were masked and vaccinated in schools, they would be in schools. There are simple solutions that we know work that can be accomplished. But Republicans don't want to do that. They don't want to talk about those things. They want to appeal to the heartstrings of your freedom and all those kinds of things. I want people to be safe. I lived through a reality where I knew tons of people who were dying from COVID, and I couldn't interact with my grandmother. So why are Detroit public schools closed? Because too many people live with their grandmother, their aunts and their uncles, and they can't bring it home and they can't do it safely. and they won't. That's
we're going to have to end it there for this particular topic. We're going to come back with some final thoughts from our panel. Stay with us. We're out of time. That does it for this edition of
Let It Rip.